This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony from Day 5 of Sean Diddy Combs' trial, as reported by Inner City Press. Before we begin, viewers are strongly advised to exercise caution. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Cassie Ventura for the first time described in disturbing detail what she allegedly witnessed inside Diddy's hidden underground tunnels. Was not about music fame or even their tumultuous relationship. Rather, it was something much darker. Revealed during Cassie's cross-examination on Day 5 left the courtroom in shock and could be the key to unraveling one of the most shocking celebrity trials in recent history. What was buried beneath Diddy's empire might finally be exposed. Day 5 of the trial opened with a strange sense of anticipation. Some passages have been censored to comply with YouTube's guidelines, but the core testimony is still intact. The public gallery was packed more than usual, and even the jurors appeared more attentive. There was a sense of urgency, and everyone understood why Cassie Ventura was taking the stand again. Unlike the days of routine but emotionally charged testimony, today would be different. Cassie entered quietly, surrounded by security, and took her seat across from the defense. She appeared calm but exhausted. The judge reminded everyone that courtroom decorum would be strictly enforced. Then the interrogation started. The defense, apparently changing tactics, asked Cassie to walk the court through Diddy's Los Angeles mansion and its layout and security procedures instead of asking basic relationship questions. At first, the questions seemed strangely architectural, but then one slipped through that stopped everything. Miss Ventura, have you ever been beneath the property inside the tunnel? There was a brief pause, and the prosecution objected, calling it irrelevant and speculative, but the judge permitted it. Cassie inhaled deeply and said, yes, which instantly changed the atmosphere in the room. For months, there had been rumors about tunnels on Reddit, anonymous claims, and even jokes in the media, but no one had verified them. Not until now. The defense attorney leaned in. And what exactly did you see when you went down there? I didn't want to go, Cassie started. He told me to follow him. She explained that the entrance was outside, not inside the mansion itself, hidden behind foliage near the pool area. It appeared to be a slope, just part of the landscaping, but beneath the leaves was a hatch that she claimed would remain with her forever. Concrete stairs and steel doors made it colder as we descended, and once we were inside, I realized this wasn't just a safe room, it was something different. He said he had something to show me, and I was confused, but I followed him. Refused to speak further until asked, but the room was already aware that no one was prepared for what they were about to hear. Cassie's voice remained steady as she described what was inside, which actually made it more unnerving. Her tone was detached and clear, as though she had practiced this scene in her mind for years. The entrance led to a long hallway with bare walls and fluorescent lights. There was a buzzing sound that sounded almost mechanical, and it didn't feel like a part of a house. Diddy walked ahead of her, talking to himself, mumbling about proving a point. She thought about turning around but decided against it. He had that look in his eye that said, "Don't argue." She described the walk as confusing, winding hallways without windows or cell service. They entered a large chamber-like room with red lights and cameras in the corners after passing through a secured door that was unlocked using a keypad, Cassie claimed. She pointed out details, such as shelves full of props, masks, ropes, oils, and latex outfits, a rack of clothing that appeared unworn, mirrors on the ceiling and floor, soundproof padding on the walls, and leather furniture that smelled of cleaning chemicals and sweat, among other things. She claimed that the room was not meant for leisure or entertainment, but rather for something else, and that it was clinical but perverse. The defense pressed her, saying, "Have you ever seen anyone else down there?" Cassie hesitated, but she did describe seeing two women wearing masks and wigs. One was sitting near a tripod with a camera mounted, and the other was lying motionless on a couch. They didn't talk or move much, so he called them performers. I wasn't introduced. When asked how long she stayed, she replied, "Not long." I excused myself by saying that I was feeling ill. When asked to describe the layout, Cassie gave even more terrifying details. It wasn't just one room, there were 3 more. One had no lights at all, just a bench in the middle and chains on the wall. The second had a full-length mirror and a digital panel. Upstairs, she locked the bedroom door. Hours later, Diddy confronted her and said, "You never saw anything. You don't repeat anything. That place is for me, not for you." That was the only time she ever went down there, but she never forgot it. The third had nothing but a chair and a box of wires next to the bed, and I didn't know what it was for. When I told him I wanted to leave, he laughed and told her she wasn't ready, but what really unnerved her were the words he whispered before opening the last door. "This is where I bring the ones I own." Cassie said she heard muffled sounds behind one door, like music coming from a speaker, but she left the tunnel that night with trembling, and her clothes smelled like the place for hours afterward. In court, she acknowledged that she never told anyone, not friends or family, because, saying that if I said something, I would disappear like those girls in the room. The prosecution questioned why she chose this time because it's not just about me anymore, because he's still doing this, because if someone else ends up. When the court resumed, the questioning moved from the actual area beneath the mansion to what happened above it, but it was still unsettling. The defense attempted to reframe Cassie's experiences as consensual by focusing on the now infamous term freakoffs. However, the judge requested a brief recess, but nobody moved in the courtroom because what had just been said was more than testimony, it was a warning. "Can you explain what a freakoff was?" the defense asked Cassie, who nodded slightly. It was a planned night that always involved sex, sometimes with multiple people, sometimes filmed, and sometimes he would assign roles. There were instructions, sometimes drugs were required, and the jury was shown text messages dating back years. Already, it had come up in her texts with Diddy, frequently in light-hearted or coded language. In another discussion, Diddy said, "Bring candles, grab outfits, I want you in a wig. Game starts at 10 p.m. No breaking character until 8 a.m. Cassie explained that these weren't one-off occurrences. Rather, they were happening at least twice a month. Some of them were impromptu, while others were planned, such as business meetings with assistants present. She occasionally agreed, but agreeing while under the influence of drugs is not consent. I was frequently high, and occasionally I couldn't recall what I had done. The prosecution interrupted to clarify that the sessions Diddy had mentioned in writing frequently took place in upscale hotels and occasionally in his private residences. Did any of these events take place in the tunnel? Cassie swallowed hard. She recounted an instance in which she was told to wear a latex suit and keep quiet the entire night, and I was warned that I would face consequences if I. This time I want control. No safe word. Cassie testified that she didn't always feel in control of her own body. After that, I felt hollow, and I wasn't sure who I was anymore. She would later delete videos and photos, not out of shame but out of fear that if she spoke, something worse would happen. The guests that night included strangers, and he never gave names, but I was told to trust him. One message that was turned into evidence contained a chilling line from Diddy. Cassie testified that the drugs were frequently given to her by Diddy or his employees. He would say that it was something to help me relax, but it made me foggy and slow compliant. She recalled one night waking up on the floor of his Miami property. The prosecution asked Cassie what substances were commonly used during these events. She didn't hesitate to answer, opiates, MDMA, benzo weed, but mostly pills I didn't ask for. Sometimes I didn't know what I took until I passed out. She told the court that she ultimately started to assume that films were being stored and that he would tell her, "You're mine forever now," while she was bathed in perspiration and the camera light was still on. She didn't know how she got there or who was in the room. I initially believed it to be simply words, but then I understood that he was recording things for control. The defense contested her claim, asking if she had ever seen the tapes. He only showed her a small film on his laptop of two men, but I couldn't recall it. "I keep everything for leverage," she continued, pleading with him to remove it. Cassie described how this control went beyond the bedroom, saying that if she left the house without checking in, he would call 50 times and threaten to ruin everything if she didn't answer. She also suspected that he wanted his friends to stop selling drugs to her over the phone, saying she was stealing from him. It seemed as though he was denying me access to anything outside of him. The prosecution opened a new line of questioning as her testimony continued into the afternoon. She said she tried to get help through a luxury rehab disguised as a spa, but he discovered it. He showed up and told them, "I'm just dramatic," and she checked out the following day. The courtroom sat in stunned silence as she admitted to trying several times to stop taking pills on her own, but I couldn't, not with him still in my life. She testified that during multiple freakoffs, other women were present. Sometimes escorts, sometimes women she didn't know, sometimes celebrities, and that they would arrive by car service, sometimes masked, sometimes crying. She named Tiffany Red, a former friend, as one of the few people who witnessed what transpired behind closed doors. Tiffany was at my 29th birthday party, and she told me that she saw things. She shook her head. The prosecution pressed further, asking if any staff members witnessed what was happening. Cassie said that his assistants helped coordinate, knowing when women were arriving and cleaning up afterward. I'm not sure how much they knew, but they weren't blind. The court also re-examined an open letter Tiffany wrote years later that was published in Rolling Stone, criticizing Diddy's behavior. She also recalled the moment she realized her privacy was an issue. Illusion: I once saw one of his helpers enter on our way. He didn't bat an eye and simply muttered, "Sorry, boss." The defense argued this didn't prove criminal intent, but Cassie's words struck a nerve. It wasn't about sex, it was about obedience and submission. He needed to feel untouchable. And when asked why so many stayed silent for so long, her answer was immediate. "Because we thought no one would believe us because he's Diddy." She paused. "But now the truth is out, and I'm not." The prosecution moved on to the most horrific part of the testimony as the courtroom prepared for the next chapter. Cassie had already detailed the manipulation, the underground tunnel, and the unsettling parties, but what followed wasn't symbolic. It was blood and bruises, and her body was damaged in silence. "Did Mr. Combs ever physically assault you?" the prosecutor asked Cassie, who nodded and stared. The court was shown pictures of a gash above her eyebrow, which Cassie confirmed was from a night she came home late after a solo dinner. "He believed I was cheating, but I wasn't." She said he was drunk, paranoid, and aggressive. "While I was supposed to be packing for a trip, I fell asleep on the couch because I was exhausted." Yes, she repeatedly described early signs of him grabbing her wrist too hard and pushing her during arguments. He always apologized afterward and promised it wouldn't happen again, but it always did. The prosecution asked, "Do you remember who it was?" "Kid Cudi," she said, "thought we were having an affair." She claimed that they had dated briefly during a break in her relationship with Diddy, but that he couldn't let it go and kept bringing it up to justify his actions. She also recalled being kicked in the back after he read a text from another man. When asked why she didn't call the police, she replied, "Because I didn't think anyone would believe me. He had power, I didn't." Then she told the court something that dropped like a stone. "After one of the worst nights, he threw me off a boat in the Caribbean." She explained how he found ways to punish her even when she tried to leave. "He would send messages through people I trusted to who was in control." When the court resumed, the prosecution carefully led Cassie into the final and most notorious event, the Intercontinental Hotel incident. This wasn't a rumor. This was an online gossip, and this was the night that one juror was visibly shaken. The judge called for a brief pause, but the damage was done. Cassie had just that the abuse wasn't symbolic or hidden in shadows. It was physical, violent, and real. Changed everything. "It was the night before your movie came out, right?" They asked. "Yes," and she said, "I had waited years for that premiere, and I wanted to celebrate because I was proud of the film." However, Diddy had other plans, and Cassie testified that he forced her to have one more freak-off. He said it would be quick and help us reconnect. She was hesitant, but he persisted. "He told me that it was customary for every significant event to require one of our nights." Eventually, she gave in because she wanted peace. Cassie explained that she was driven to the Intercontinental the night before my red carpet event, thinking it would just be the two of them. However, when she got there were already two women and a male dancer with candles and cameras. I recognized what it was. Cassie said she was given a pill, which he said would help her relax. "I took it because I was already tired." She recalled flashes, the dancer wearing a mask, Diddy recording on his phone, and her slurring words in the mirror. She never asked. She got up, showered, and walked the red carpet hours later, smiling. No one noticed the bruises beneath the dress. The prosecution then showed a series of texts from that day, including Diddy asking if she was still glowing and if she wanted to do it again. I remember saying, then nothing. I woke up hours later, alone, and covered in sweat. I checked my phone, and he had sent a message that said, I'm proud. It wasn't just one night, it was the final straw in 10 years of control. The following morning, she flew to New York alone, Diddy not following, and for the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe. The last part of Cassie's Day 5 testimony was calmly measured. It wasn't as shocking as the tunnel or the violence. After the after-party, she said, I never responded. However, it was more eerie because it depicted what happened after the cameras stopped flashing. She talked about her attempts to heal. At first, I pretended nothing happened and told people that we simply grew apart, but on the inside, she was broken. She started therapy, and then she began to recall specifics about the nights she had repressed, the people she had met, and the rooms she had entered. The civil lawsuit was filed quickly and settled even faster, but to Cassie, it wasn't about money, it was about her record, a document. It said, I wasn't crazy, it happened. Her lawsuit sparked a wave of other women coming forward, anonymous stories, new complaints, and an FBI raid. Authorities searched Diddy's properties for evidence of coercion and trafficking, and what they found is still sealed, but there were rumors of underground structures, files, and even recording devices. Reporters asked Cassie for an interview, but she said, a symbol, I just wanted to be free, but now she was in federal court, speaking under oath and recounting everything in detail. When asked what she hoped would happen, she said that she hoped for immediate accountability, not just for me, but for everyone who entered that house, for everyone who vanished into those tunnels and never spoke again. Her testimony came to an end, and the courtroom sat motionless as the judge dismissed the jury for the day. Cameras were not permitted inside, but Cassie Ventura didn't only testify. She tore the lid off a hidden world that had been protected by money, fame, and quiet. Outsiders already understood something significant had just occurred, and regardless of what happens next, the truth is out.